Joining us on the phones right now is Scott Braddock, editor of QuorumReport.com. Scott, good morning. How are you today?
Doing okay, and no difficulties as bad as accidentally releasing audio of things you didn't think anybody would hear you say.
You know, that's you hate when that happens.
It's such a drag.
So, okay, we'll start there. We'll start with the scoop that QuorumReport.com had on Friday. Tell us what happened. A little bit of an oopsie moment dealing with an organization that you would think would know how to handle audio.
You would think that, and it's not often that you see the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and almost all House Republicans come out at once and condemn what a group had said. But Empower Texans, headed up by Michael Quinn Sullivan and Chairman Tim Dunn, they do a podcast, and I do a podcast, and Chad, I go out of my way.
Yours is listened to.
I always do the podcast in one take with no bloopers. That's on purpose. Apparently, they posted their podcast without editing out the conversations that they didn't want people to hear. And quite frankly, what they had said, and look, Chad, I think everybody can agree. There's a legitimate debate with many legitimate questions about the way the governor is handling the response to COVID-19.
Yes.
No one would take issue with that, right? But when you go as far as to make fun of the man for being in a wheelchair because he is a paraplegic who was injured in a horrible freak accident years ago in Houston, I think you're going pretty into territory that people are not going to agree with at all. Just vile, vicious, nasty. And as you know, Chad, I mean, anybody can follow my Twitter feed. I'm I'm a critic of the governor often in the way that he responds to things, and I have problems with some of the policy he tries to implement, but I've never said anything like that. And, you did have Republicans trying to figure out how to respond to this. I mean, look, Republicans have taken a lot of money from this group over the years, as you know. It used to be the fact, and maybe it won't be anymore, that certain candidates coveted the endorsement of Empower Texans, but I saw Republicans, and you probably did too, all across the political spectrum, from hard right to what people might consider more moderate Republicans, saying this is completely unacceptable. And then I think that there was a little bit of a debate between Republicans, and it's going on right now as we're talking about whether this is a deal where Empower Texans ought to just fire these two guys who were saying this on the podcast. It was the general counsel, Tony McDonald, and one of the staffers over there, Carrie Cheshire. Those were the two who were caught on tape. Republicans debating whether or not they ought to just call for those guys to be, just fired or terminated from the organization, or whether it's more of a systemic problem and a culture problem within Empower Texans. Chairman Dan Huberty, who's the head of the Education Committee in the Texas House, he had said the latter, basically. He said, look, Michael Quinn Sullivan, the main spokesman over there, he said, quote, he's trained his minions well. The behavior is vile and despicable, and basically he and others just condemning the group all around, suggesting maybe nobody should want their money, their endorsements. And then I saw John Frullo from the Lubbock area saying that these two bigots basically need to be fired from the organization, but I think some others, Chad, at least behind the scenes, pushing back on that kind of suggestion. They agree with Representative Frullo's his sentiment. But if you just say that these two guys need to be fired, then you're opening it up for Sullivan and Chairman Dunn to say, well, it's just two bad apples, and if we got rid of them, then everything's okay.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, even the lieutenant governor. I mean, the lieutenant governor came down pretty hard on them, and again, everyone is basically, having Abbott's back on this. And obviously it was, I think it was a combination of things. It was a 3-minute piece of audio. Mm-hmm. And in that, I mean, you have guys who say they're part of a news organization, Scott.
That's right.
Who are making fun of Abbott for being in a wheelchair.
Yes.
Calling him a piece of blank.
Using the F word and
that they really hate him.
Mm-hmm. And we should also say, remember, when Empower Texans was going after the speaker, Dennis Bonnen, last year, there's hypocrisy all around. Remember, how many times did Michael Quinn Sullivan at Empower Texans say that he couldn't believe the kind of language that was being used by the speaker in that secretly recorded audio last year. And of course, I don't have all the warmest feelings for the speaker, but the fact of the matter is that there's hypocrisy there. This is also a group that often, if you listen to their podcast, Chad, or if you look at the Empower Texans Facebook Live, different shows that they do on Facebook, they open their shows with prayer. You would think you were going to a church service. And so, and they put, Bible verses and everything. These are folks who are appealing to the absolute, heartfelt faith of good Christians all over Texas, and I think they try to, take advantage of the fact that people are people of faith. When the fact is, if they don't think the microphone is hot, then these are the kinds of things that they say. And it really was stunning to a lot of people all across the political spectrum. And I saw Democrats, Republicans, liberals, moderates, conservatives, and the rest saying, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but saying these guys are trash and they need to go.
Well, and to me, and I go to the political side of some of this.
Yeah.
You take the last year or so, Empower Texans, let's go back to the last legislative session. The feeling was Empower Texans did not have a lot of juice left. Then they had the secret audio. They released it. All of a sudden, guess what? Empower Texans has some juice now. Maybe they're going to be power players again.
Right.
And now, the basic message is you guys aren't allowed in the office anymore. All within a year, this has happened.
And I had heard a lot of Republicans say they wouldn't be allowed in the office anyway because they're secretly taping people, right? And maybe they were going to have some kind of a resurgence based on what I think is some legitimate anger at the governor over his handling of the COVID-19 response. And we've talked about this, Chad. There's no governor who has, been spared criticism for the way they're handling the response to this, right? In New York, you've got Cuomo. In California, you've got Newsom, and they've been blasted for the way that they have handled certain things and the complete shutdowns of their state. And now they're reopening. The governor here, Governor Abbott, has been criticized from the left for opening things too fast and from the right for going too slow. And that, again, is a legitimate debate. But to take it in the direction of making fun of the guy because he's in a wheelchair, and we should also say that this Empower Texans staffer said on the audio, which people can hear at quorumreport.com, and I'll tease this out here on the show, Chad, there's more audio yet to come that you'll see later today. The staffer said that
wait a minute. Wait.
Yes.
Are you pulling a Sullivan? Are you saying there's more audio?
Because I'm not gonna wait for weeks to put it out.
Okay.
It'll be out today. And there's some more rough language ahead from some of these outtakes. Not pulling a Sullivan here. People are going to get it pretty quick.
Okay.
But in that audio that was released on Friday, the staffer said that he sort of had his own personal filter where he, felt that he used to not make fun of the governor because he was in a wheelchair. That he could shut that off. That it's sort of his instinct is to make fun of him because he's in a wheelchair. But he said that because the governor's policies have been so bad lately that he can't shut that off, and now he just feels like he has to make fun of him because he's in a wheelchair, which is pretty unbelievable.
Wow. Well, we'll see what else.
I can't even believe I'm saying all this on the radio, but it's Texas politics, Chad. It's never boring.
It never stops. It's never boring, and it never stops. Speaking of the governor, he's got a 2 p.m. press conference today where I expect he's going to talk about schools reopening and maybe maybe some other stuff too, right?
On a conference call with lawmakers last week, he shocked some of them by saying that schools are going to be open again this fall. They felt that they were blindsided. Others, though, Chad said that they felt that, they feel that it's okay. If we're going to be opening up businesses, then we should open up schools as well. There was some chatter in the background in Austin late in the week that the Texas Education Agency, that their staff was not going to be going back to work at the actual office until January, and some folks thought that might be hypocritical. If the kids have to go back to school, then the TEA staff ought to have to be back in the building. That would be fair. And then we were told that they're all going to go back at the same time, so that got worked out. I think the governor's going to face some questions this afternoon, legitimate questions about the spikes in COVID cases, especially in some of the urban areas. You've probably seen reports out of Houston where it looks like they have about double the cases that they did since Memorial Day. And, of course, the county leadership in Harris County, where Houston is, Bexar County, where San Antonio is, and in Dallas County, they're all now looking to the new guidance from the governor that says that the local officials can mandate that businesses require their customers to have masks when they're in their retail outlets or whatever, whatever other stores. And so I think the governor's going to have to grapple with some of those questions. There's some question about limiting press access to the press conferences. It's still the case, Chad, that only 3 reporters are allowed to go to the press conference, which was the case when we originally saw the state shut down. And at the time, I think folks gave the governor the benefit of the doubt and said, well, if businesses have to be shut down, then maybe there should be some limited access for the press so that we can maintain physical distance and all of that. But now people are starting to say, look, if the state is essentially open, 75% of most businesses, or almost all businesses with rare exception, then probably they should open up those press conferences again and let more folks get in there to ask him real questions. We'll see if he's asked about that specifically this afternoon as well. 2 o'clock is when he's supposed to talk.
Scott, can I put you on hold and we do one more segment when we come back?
Absolutely. You
got time? Okay, let's do that. When we come back, let's talk about this new rule also, or not new rule, but what was buried inside the executive order on counties and cities being able to do masks. We'll be right back. Back on the Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. We've got Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com, on with us. And, Scott, I wanted to hold you over because you brought up this issue of cities and counties. They've always been able during the executive orders to require masks, and what they're doing is basically telling businesses you have to require masks of your customers. And how's that been going through the state? I mean, and what's been the discussion about that?
We've seen the Bexar County judge down in San Antonio, Nelson Wolf, act quickly on this, and then there was a debate in Dallas about whether they should do it. In Houston, Harris County looks like they're doing it starting today, and it is a frustrating thing for local officials, as we were talking about before the break. And it's a frustrating thing for business owners, too, Chad. I mean, for everybody, not knowing exactly what the rules are. I think, as you tweeted out last week, it's as if the government wants to sort of get around being blamed on this by saying that the business owners can be the ones to mandate the masks, even though those businesses will be ordered to mandate the masks, to be real clear about that. But, of course, it's not the first time that the governor has been unclear about exactly what's in his orders. Remember back, I think on April 27th, it was when he said that the state was going to be reopening, in phases. I think we would have 1, 2, 3, 4 phases of reopening. And the governor had said that he would like to see his orders enforced by jail time, fines, and suspension of licenses or loss of licenses for doing business. And then when you saw a business owner actually go to jail in connection with defying the orders, what happened? The governor said, well, it's not like I really wanted anybody to go to jail. Go back to when the state initially shut down, and we were told that this was not a stay-at-home strategy. The governor said that. That's the quote from his press conference when he laid that out. And then the very next day, he issued a PSA from his office that said Texans are required to stay at home. That's just a couple of examples where the governor has not been clear here. And, Chad, I think it speaks to the fact that the guy in the governor's office is a judge, a longtime jurist, and then was attorney general. He's a great legal mind, and he's got some vague orders here. And I think it's valid criticism to say that the orders are vague, and the governor is trying to avoid the political blowback of the decisions that are not popular, right? I mean, when big things were shutting down, like Rodeo Houston, South by Southwest, big events were being shut down, and, counties were starting to put restrictions in place, the governor was sort of hands-off about all that. Then when it was time to reopen the state, which was going to be very popular, at least certainly more popular with conservatives and business people, then the governor wanted to handle all that himself. And in fact, he went as far as saying that he was suspending the parts of state law that allow for county judges and mayors to deal with these sorts of crises, and essentially just taking on all the responsibility himself to reopen the state. That would be seen as more popular. And now that restrictions are going back into place, particularly in these urban areas, Houston, Dallas, et cetera, the governor is saying, well, the local folks can handle that. So what we have seen since the very beginning here is the governor sort of trying to have it both ways and maneuvering in such a way that allows him to be off the hook for those things that are going to be seen as less popular and certainly unpopular with the right wing of the Republican Party.
Scott Braddock, quorumreport.com. Go to his website, check out all the latest buzz on Texas politics, and also get ready for more audio to come out. Scott, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. We'll talk soon.
All right. That's Scott Braddock, editor of quorumreport.com.